Hello guys, welcome to Ask Raghu. Today we're going to see what is happening in China's Hong Kong. The protest that is going on for months right now, and millions of people have taken to the streets protesting against the China's rule within Hong Kong. So why this protest, what is happening, what is their demands, and this is all we're going to see for today. So now to start with, as usual, we'll quickly run through some of the history of Hong Kong. So Hong Kong in 1840, when British right after the Opium War, so they actually took over Hong Kong. So they started ruling Hong Kong, and it ran for a century. And then during the World War, so the Japan occupied a portion of Hong Kong, pretty much most of the Hong Kong, and Japan starts ruling Hong Kong. So that is when a lot of brutality happened, and Treaty of Nanking, a lot of those things comes into place during those times. So that's one thing to remember, probably a separate chapter to go through Japan's rule in Hong Kong. So that happened around the 1930s until the end of the World War II. So once the World War II was over, Japan retreated, and Hong Kong goes back to Britain's rule. So that is what the brief history about Hong Kong starting from 1840. So now if you look at it before 1840, it was pretty much all together as China, and China was not as strong as what it is today to control the entire territory. And now if you look at it, there is two parties that's in protesting against each other, fighting against each other. So one is the China, and another one is the Hong Kong. So the Hong Kong, when you're talking about, it's not actually the entire Hong Kong. And again, when it comes to China, it's not actually the China or Chinese people. It's just the regime. So it's just the People's Republic Party of China. So in China there is no press freedom, and people don't have right to vote. Of course they can't vote, and they don't have social medias. It's all state controlled, and so pretty much people within China, they don't even have a say about it and cannot protest, and they will be arrested if they protest within China. So Hong Kong doesn't have those rules. So the reason being is, when British took over Hong Kong, they actually established a separate legal system for Hong Kong, which is similar to what they follow in Britain. So there is a fair trial, there is democracy, the people can elect and vote people, leaders, and their local councils, and a lot of these things were similar to what was happening in Britain. And in 1984, so that's when Britain wanted to leave away and to pretty much leave Hong Kong to China's care. And that is when there was some lengthy negotiations gone on between Hong Kong government and Britain, as well as the Chinese parties, and they decided to let Hong Kong to be taken care by Chinese and Chinese government. And in turn, there was some certain guidelines that was established. One is, there will be one country, two system rule. So that is a pretty known term within Hong Kong. That means it's still one country. Hong Kong belongs to China, it's part of China, but the rule, the system and legislation, a lot of these things are different in Hong Kong compared to the mainland China. So that's the first rule. And second one is the autonomy until 2047. So even though today Hong Kong is an autonomous country by itself, not a country, but it's a province by itself, people have been complaining that this autonomy has been eroding for decades now. From the moment this was established, 1984, this autonomy has been eroding since a while. The reason being is, Chinese government is actually infiltrating its own people who's like supporters of Chinese government, or people who work for the Chinese government, into the Hong Kong's administration, into police departments, and a lot of these government work. And so pretty much they run the show. So that is what people complaining about. And another thing is the economic trade. So the Hong Kong will remain as it is in terms of the economic trade with other European countries. And so that is why Hong Kong was one of the major contributor to China's growth, and it is it's still the financial capital for China. And this protest is disrupting that image of Hong Kong being a financial capital. But anyway, it's still the king of China. It makes a lot of money compared to rest of the other provinces. So now they will have their own judicial, executive and legislative powers. So that's like entirely different from what China follows. So that's another thing. And then they preserve the current rights of the citizens. So in China, citizens' rights are pretty much under the thumb of the state. So they don't really have their own say. Whereas with Hong Kong, the people have more freedom. People can use social media, people can use the press is actually not under the state's rule, even though some of them, and how it works even in under democracy. Then there is actually a separate thing which people are fond is the religion that they follow has no limitations or restrictions. In China there is a lot of oppression going on around a lot of different religions, because Chinese government doesn't believe in any religion or god. They are atheist. So that's one thing. And so another major thing is the Chinese government nominate the Hong Kong's chief executive. So this goes by an election process of around 1,200 elected representatives, and these elected representatives are nominated by the Chinese government. So this was the very first motive for people to protest against China's rule within Hong Kong. So what was happening is the China's Hong Kong chief executive, and so this the last person who was elected was Carrie Lam, and she was elected by the Chinese government through the 1,200 elected committee members, and these committee members are actually nominated by the Chinese government. So pretty much whomever China wants it will be the one who will be ruling Hong Kong. So that was one of the very first thing people started protesting about what is happening, and then we want autonomy as per the agreement and all that sort of stuff. So that's one of the things. And another major thing which started is why this protest. So what was the flashing point to get this protest started? So what was the first thing? So it started with Hong Kong altering the extradition bill. So now what happens when you are within China, and then if you talk against the state, they can actually take you away and you will disappear. And this happens, and people know that. With Hong Kong, it's not possible. So Chinese government cannot legally extract any Hong Kong citizens into China for any cases, so or even for legal proceedings. So now this has been happening, but this was under the cover. It was all illegal, and it was done by the intelligence and stuff. So now they wanted to do it legally. So the Hong Kong extradition bill, right after we got the chief executive, and so they started changing the Hong Kong extradition bill. So with that one, the changes, case by case extradition will be possible with Hong Kong. That means any Hong Kong citizens or protesting, or for any reason, if they are actually going against the state can actually use this bill to go against them. And the reason they cited for the change of this bill is there was a murder case, and that was by Chan Tang Kai, and he was actually a Hong Kong citizen. He went with his wife in 2018 to Taiwan, and where he murdered his girlfriend, a pregnant girlfriend, and stuffed her into a suitcase. And this was like a wide recognized, and there was a lot of outcry for this one. And this was like a famous murder case, and it was very gruesome. And that case, Chinese government took it as a pony case, and then they actually used that because the Hong Kong government doesn't have an extradition treaty with the Taiwanese government. So they wanted to change the extradition bill, citing this case was a root cause. So now people don't believe in this. This was just a decoy. So that is the first thing. So what happened is right after they start making changes, they start exerting more pressure, and they can see a lot of people getting disappeared, and this was happening, and Hong Kong police was used as a tool for getting this work done. So now that was in 2018. So the smoke starts coming out, and there is fire. So without fire there will not be any smoke. So that was the case in 2018. And then in 2019, just before few months ago, so when people started protesting about this Hong Kong chief executive, and then the extradition bill and things like that, the Chinese government starts extraditing people. That means they start arresting people and then laying charges on them and calling them as rioters. And then in Hong Kong, even in China, for rioting, the charges were like around 10 years of jail term. So that was pretty brutal. And moreover, these people who was protesting is all doing peacefully for months together right now, and it's just there are people who is infiltrating and creating havoc within the protest to make it look like a riot, and then arresting the genuine people who was behind the protest. So that was the main thing. So the activists are actually calling for a fair trial, and also making sure certain things are put in place. So they actually want 5 things to be. They have 5 demands, and so these are the demands. They want to not even an inch. They want to go behind these ones. They don't want delays. They don't want any other excuses. They wanted straight away these 5 things done. So the first thing is full withdrawal of the extradition bill. So that is like currently Carrie, the chief executive of Hong Kong, she said, like, we will actually have the limit of how many people can be extradited using this bill, and then we will go through case by cases. She was giving a lot of these different versions of this bill, and people are not too convinced. They say, like, this is just a decoy again to get away from this protest and then start doing what they want to do. So they want a full withdrawal of the extradition bill. So that means the bill should be abolished. So that is the thing. And then retract the word riot has been used against these peaceful protests. And now, because of the term, people or protesters have been called as rioters, and then they've been arrested, and the charges have been laid on them. So that is another thing. They want that to be retracted. And then the release of protesters and drop charges. So since a lot of these guys, or a lot of these protesters, are just in their 20s and early 30s and stuff like that, so they are actually the new generation of Hong Kongers, hardworking young teenagers, and these people will lose their future forever if they're getting arrested and the charges were laid on them, because they will lose their entire life within jail, and for something they didn't actually commit. So they want them to be released and the charges to be dropped. And then independent inquiry into Hong Kong's police brutality and how they handle protesters, because one of the protesters was shot in the eye, and there was also stories saying that the Chinese government released a video saying that someone got some money. So it could all be intelligence work, but the main thing is one of the protesters was shot in the eye. And even if you look at the videos on Chinese protest, and some of these protesters wearing an eye patch with blood on it, it's not actually blood, just a red ink or something. So that is just to commemorate the protester who got hit by the police in the eye. So that was one of the main reasons. And then they should have a liberty to choose their own leaders. So that is like, right now it's actually state sponsored election, and then the committee members or sympathizers of the Chinese government. So they want an independent and decent and their own democratic way of electing their own leaders. So these are the 5 demands that they kept it against the Chinese government, and this is what they want to get out of this protest. And right now, if you look at the strength of the protest, the Chinese government has military power. So if you look at a lot of those football stadiums have got loads and loads of military weapons, and tanks have been lined up just to get in control, want to be in control if things goes out of their hand. And a lot of spies have been infiltrated into the protest, and people saying that they've been using to create confusions and making the protest and take the protest in a different directions and stuff. And then blockage of press. So there is quite a bit of blockage of press, and the good thing is Hong Kong doesn't have internet screening just like how they have it in China. So they have a bit of freedom there, but so that's why we are able to hear a lot of these news, or else it will all be state sponsored news. So now the next thing is from the protesters, they have a strength of 2 million protesters, and that number is actually growing. So a few weeks ago it was 1 million stand-in protesters in the street. So last week there was 2 million protesters. So they're actually growing in numbers. And then they have worldwide support. Leaders from around the world, America, Canada, France, a lot of these leaders, a lot of these country people are supporting the protesters and their peaceful way of protesting it. And their numbers are growing, their supporters' numbers are growing. So this is what the status of the Hong Kong protest as of today. And thanks for watching, guys, and subscribe to the channel if you like my videos. And if you have any questions, just throw it onto the comment section. We'll answer when we can.